shit. That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Wilsey, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
And we're back live at NACAC in LA. I am with Allison Lanier, Director of Client Engagement at GMB. Now, fun fact, Allison and I have been together literally all week. We went from High Ed Web in Albuquerque now to NACAC in LA. So, Allison, it was a little funny to say, like, how's it going? Because I've been seeing you nonstop for the last few days. But how was your morning of day one at NACAC? I'm a little surprised that I'm not in zombie mode. I think that one thing NACAC has done really well so far is that there's ample coffee stations, ample tea stations. So for the most part, I would give it myself a 7 out of 10 in alert. Here's solid. Yes. Solid. So Allison and I actually met a few years back at an EduWeb conference in Philly. So I know that Allison is really focused on digital and brand. And so when she rose her hand to say, hey, I'd like to be on the Pulse, like, yes, instantly knew this would be a perfect interview for this audience. Now, we're going to take the spin, though, of using artificial intelligence for brand building. And Allison, I'm curious to just get kind of your initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we do in this space is really with our smaller institutions who have super lean resources. And I know we'll want to dive into that in a little bit more detail, but what we have to do is really think differently about how we can support our clients and building that voice and tone first and foremost to be able to bring that to life in any of their digital aspects. So a lot of times where this kind of started to come to life is that clients will come to us and they'll say, hey, we really need the support with a digital campaign, or we need support with building out our website. And one of the first questions that we have to ask is, okay, it's great, but do we have a brand established? What is our voice and tone? Who are we? And why do students choose us today? And a lot of times people will say, well, yes, we do. It's probably, the institutions might be a little older, but maybe it doesn't reflect us. Well, yeah, we absolutely love it. So a big component of the work that we'll do is actually start by looking at the brand first and foremost, and then start to bring that to light in all of the digital components. But what we have found is that a lot of times we might have some sort of a brand, maybe their platform, a little bit of messaging built out. But what we can do is help to support our clients by not only just doing the brand, but how can we equip them to live it out further. And so that's where AI comes in, because we can really take the components that exist today, whether it's that voice and tone, maybe some vocabulary that they have built out, any of those components, and then utilize that with things like ChatGPT and those other platforms to help them develop the content that they can then bring to life digitally.
You just brought up one of my favorite topics, which is how AI impacts lean teams. And so you and GMB are doing all of this great work for your customers, and then I have to imagine handing some things over, and these individuals may be wearing 5, 10, 15 different hats. So I think this is where AI has the biggest impact, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think it allows us to get more focused on the stuff that really matters. Can you give me some specific examples of how your customers are taking the brand work, utilizing AI, and helping them just do stuff better? That highly technical tool stuff.
Yes, of course. We can figure out how to do the stuff better. So a big piece of it, and I'll just kind of dive straight on into the website. But if we think about your program pages, I would say that's one of the biggest areas where there's this opportunity to weave in what makes your institution unique, but then also pulling in the factors that makes that program unique. And so what we can do is help our clients, or even just equip them to set up a framework for whatever that page needs to look like. Pull in those elements I keep talking about the brand, because your brand is a persona. So as soon as you can start to think about your brand as an actual person, add in some prompts into ChatGPT or your platform of choice and say, okay, we're about to write a program page for math and science, but make sure that you're doing it utilizing this voice and tone. Insert in institution voice and tone. And then you can also add in those prompts of saying, pull it in from this perspective of a 16, 17-year-old who's interested in a program like this. And then what are some of those things that we can pull in for, like, tell me an about page. Tell me maybe what kind of student testimonial should we look for or grab that can help to build out that page even more. So when I say this, it's not to say, hey, we're going to take exactly one for one what ChatGPT is saying to us and putting it into the website. Because I think we even learned this at High Ed Web, right? Everything has to be human-centered. So you can utilize that as your outline and then say, all right, these are the components that we really actually want on our program page. Now you're probably going to go to your front-end director. You're probably going to go to real-life students and be able to get those testimonials or get the information that ChatGPT or that platform told you that you needed to enter into that page. So it helps you with the research component in the upfront, and you're not having to stare at a template and say, okay, crap, now what do I do?
Yeah. Well, and that's where we get stuck, right?
Yeah.
Like we said, we have that blank page syndrome, or we're like, okay, well, what's next? And the nice thing is these third-party tools like a ChatGPT are so great for the ideation. But frankly, like, that's where I feel most people are getting stuck in our industry. And whenever I talk to folks about AI, like, I still get met with some resistance, because I think the only exposure that they have had has been to these tools. They're not baked into the things that they're using yet. And they're not taking the extra step to, like, say, build a custom GPT that is truly centered on all of the great brand work with the voice and the tone loaded into the knowledge base. So what advice would you give, or, like, I guess, how would you help somebody who's, like, maybe listening to this and feeling like, I could never do that, or, like, I'm kind of resistant to doing that? Like, how would you encourage them to maybe overcome that?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, stop taking yourself too seriously. We have to play. Like, we have to play with this. Just because you get into a platform and just because you give it some prompts doesn't mean that it just took over your job and what you're doing. So I would say definitely play around with it. Another example I was actually going to get, or I think it could apply to this, of maybe an exercise for people to do. We had a client actually come to us. They had 0 brand established, and they wanted us to work on the website. However, we were tasked with writing copy for the website, not just like program pages, but they didn't have a brand. But they didn't have the capacity or the resources to establish a brand. So what I challenged our client to do is to say, all right, you've done these listening sessions. You have a brand. You have a story. Now go into a platform and put in what you think your brand is, and play around with some terminology, play around with some vocabulary that you use every day, and then prompt it to actually say, develop a persona for such and such institution, including a voice and tone and maybe some example messaging. They were able to do that, and then they submitted that back to us, and I was like, you are spot on. This is who you are. And it was because you had to just put in some extra prompts and play around with it. And then, again, you're going to tweak it, right? Like, we are humans. We need to put our touch on that. You can't just take what they provide you. But once she was able to actually ideate and play around with it and, like, get out of her head, then the results were great, because now we had this foundation that we could start writing on that was based on their brand and who they actually are.
So let's take it one step further. Let's think about extending that content, because before we hit record, like, you were talking about all the great use cases where you can really transform content. And again, coming back to your point about lean teams, somebody may find themselves in a certain role without the expertise of, say, search engine optimization. And this can be a game changer. Like this can really help someone get their work done faster and get it done better without necessarily having like AI assistant. Like you don't need to necessarily have the direct expertise anymore on certain things. So what are you finding, like either yourself in your own use cases or with your customers? Like where are you finding those extensions of the content and the brand?
Yes. So there's probably two ways that you can think about this, because there are a ton of resources, especially when it's being about SEO. You do want to do like thorough keyword research to understand what people are actually searching for, so you can develop your content around that. However, you also have to have an expertise or know someone who can use some of those platforms like SEMrush and stuff like that, right? But ways in which that I have personally used this for maybe content writing or blog writing for even our site or insights is going into one of the ChatGPTs or the platforms and saying, hey, what are some keywords that would be really useful around a topic such as this? And then it will spit out some keywords. Now, is it based on like pure search data? Probably not, but it's a really good place to start into ideate. And so those are some things that you can do for any of your pages. Again, I keep coming back to program pages because that's something that we just actually presented on at a high-end lab. But it's also the way that people find your institution a lot of the times. But if you could say, develop some topics for keywords that students in this category, obviously you need to feed it what that category is, would be searching or interested in around such and such program. Then it can help to ideate and build an outline for you to then rewrite, build off of, or anything within your institution's voice and tone. So it's a really good research platform. So that's the way I love to use it, as that research. And it, again, goes back to what you're talking about with the ideation and just getting that prompt in your head that you can work towards.
I think the program page example is so relevant to pretty much anyone who is listening. I mean, it is the sales page for the institution. It is arguably the most important page on the school's website, regardless of whether you're in admissions here at NACAC or you're responsible for writing the digital content that's actually going on the page, like the audience was at high-end web, right? It all comes back to those pages for so many of us, and for the student, that's where they're getting live for the information. So I think those have been terrific examples. Allison, as we're wrapping up here, what are some of the things that you're hoping to take away from NACAC? And do you have any parting thoughts to our listeners?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we do is with marketing and admissions. Something that I would really love to take away is to truly understand where, from an admission side, they see that blend or they see that partnership. Because so many times there's this silo that occurs with marketing team and then admissions teams, and we forget that we're all on one team with one same goal. So I would really love to see it from the admissions perspective of how we can try to develop solutions that are really collaborative and really come together. So that's something I'm hoping to get from this. And then from a parting thought perspective, don't be scared. If you're still hesitant and you're still like, I don't know if I want to jump on that bandwagon for AI and how it can assist, start with using it as a research tool. And if you're not comfortable using it as a research tool for work, start using it personally. Anything. Have it create a shopping list for you. Just anything to be playful and play around, get out of your head. It's not that serious. Again, just get in there and start using it.
And that is truly the best advice. Allison, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to sit down with us. Listeners, we'll be back soon with more live at NACAC interviews. Thanks, and bye-bye.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.